Did you know that Los Angeles is considered the homeless capital of the developed world? Certainly, there are places around the world with more homeless people, but for a developed nation, especially the US, Los Angeles. Why is it California has so many problems? Why is it that in San Francisco they literally have a street poop problem where they're talking about developing a poop patrol? I know it sounds silly, but I'm being serious. California has such an insane homelessness problem. Why, though? They're a blue state. Shouldn't they be doing something to help these people? Well, now there's concerns, growing concerns, of medieval diseases, typhoid outbreaks, and now this from NBC News. Rotting trash piles sky high in LA, attracting rats, and raising concerns of a new epidemic. Before we get into all this, I'm going to pop over to timcast.com/donate, where you can go if you'd like to support my work. There's a monthly donation option, cryptocurrency wallets, physical address, but of course, just share this video, click the like button, and comment, because that does a lot. It tells YouTube that my videos are actually worth watching, and then more people watch, and that's, that's pretty good, right? So here's the story. They say after reporting a LA's most notorious trash pile to the city's 311 service hotline, the I-team was told it could take up to 90 days before it's cleaned up. An expert says there's no time to waste. Rat-infested piles of rotting garbage left uncollected by the city of LA, even after promises to clean it up, are fueling concerns about a new epidemic after last year's record number of flea-borne typhus cases. Why does Los Angeles have a typhus outbreak? What is this? Even the city's most notorious trash pile, located between downtown LA's busy fashion and produce districts, continues to be a magnet for rats after it was cleaned up months ago. The rodents can carry typhus-infected fleas, which can spread the disease to humans through bacteria rubbed into the eyes or cuts and scrapes in the skin, resulting in severe flu-like symptoms. The NBC4 I-team first told Mayor Eric Garcetti's office about the piles of filth in the 700 block of Saris Avenue in October. At the time, he promised to make sure that trash doesn't pile up like that. And there's actually a photo up here of what appears to be, it's a video, I guess, of some kind of massive trash pile. The garbage was cleaned up after the interview, but conditions have worsened over the next 7 months. Let's talk about accountability journalism. You see, this is when journalists know if they reach out, something will be done. Of course, people can't do anything unless they know about the problem. So the journalist here says, hey man, this garbage, it's a serious problem. Let's ask the city why they're not doing something about it. And the city goes and, eventually gets rid of it. But think about what, like BuzzFeed does. They complain about YouTubers, and then YouTube bans people. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that. That's the next video. I can't walk down the street without thinking that a flea could jump on me, said Estela Lopez, who represents business owners in the area. After reporting the pile of waste to the city's 311 service hotline, the I-team was told it could take 90 days. You told us that already. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Jeffrey Klausner of UCLA said there's no time to waste. Trash and food waste attracts rats, said Klausner. It does pose a public health risk. An out-of-control rat population can even lead to the spread of dangerous strains of salmonella and bubonic plague. You mean to tell me Los Angeles, this great bastion of civil service, of social policy, is facing a potential, I don't know what he's trying to get at, but he's saying bubonic plague in Los Angeles. Well, fortunately, we have the CDC, but look, it's a fact that Los Angeles is a homeless haven, and the city isn't doing enough to actually solve these problems. Other large U.S. cities like New York and Washington, D.C. have teams devoted to aggressive rat control. In the nation's capital, they're experimenting with bait stations laced with a rat contraceptive. That's kind of weird, but sounds effective. Notice New York and D.C. are also blue. So what's up with that? I don't necessarily think it's a reflection of failed liberal policy. I think a lot of people might want to jump on that because it's a good tool against your political rival if you're conservative. Now, I think it has to do with extremely densely populated areas combined with some failed liberal policy. I don't think it's fair to just say liberal policy didn't work, period. And it's fair to point out, for one, in California, the weather is amazing. This attracts homeless people. They move there on purpose. So it's very difficult for LA and California to deal with the massive influx of those who want the beautiful weather. It's also a combination of the fact that apparently they don't clean it up after 90 days. They say, in Los Angeles, the I-team learned there is no plan or program to control the growing rat population that feasts at trash piles like the ones on Saris Avenue. It's something that we'll look into, said Pepe Garcia of Los Angeles' Bureau of Sanitation. Rats carrying typhus-infected fleas were found around LA last fall, according to county health department records obtained by the I-Team. The agency did not provide details about where the fleas were found, saying that information would cause confusion and unnecessary alarm. But the I-Team discovered that typhus-infected fleas were found on animals waiting to be adopted at the North Central Animal Shelter. Between 2013 and 2017, county residents reported a yearly average of nearly 60 cases. That's twice as many the number reported in the previous 5 years. Last year, a record 124 cases were reported in LA County. Symptoms of flea-borne typhus, which can start within 2 weeks after infection, include high fever, headache, chills, and body aches. Rashes can appear on the chest, back, arms, and legs. Fatalities occur in less than 1% of cases. The I-Team asked the Department of Public Health what became of the shelter animals carrying fleas that tested positive for typhus. We're still waiting to hear back. Well, I certainly wonder as well, but here's the thing. I decided to look into this. For those that don't know, San Francisco has a poop problem. I brought it up earlier in this segment, but it really does. Why? I don't know, but people in San Francisco just like to poop on the street. It's kind of weird considering how wealthy San Francisco is. You got to clean up your house. What does Jordan Peterson say? Clean up your room before you try and clean up the world or something like that. So I did some digging. Not really much. I was just Googling, these diseases, and I found a couple interesting stories. WebMD actually brings up the California typhus outbreak continues to grow from last year. Public health officials in Los Angeles are working to control an outbreak of typhus, a bacterial disease spread by infected fleas in the downtown area and elsewhere in the sprawling county. Okay, listen. I understand that a lot of people, homeless people, move to LA on purpose, but that should be factored into what LA does. How is it that the homeless capital of the developed world doesn't have a team dedicated to cleaning up the, dealing with the rat population? How is it that New York and DC do? But we also have this story. This is from KHN. Medieval diseases flare as unsanitary living conditions proliferate. Now, this one isn't just about California, but what was really interesting about this, they talk about Washington State. And I find it really interesting. Now, Washington State also has some pretty good weather. It doesn't get super cold, but it does kind of cold. Why is it that these western states have this problem? What is it with people wanting to move to these cities, sleep on the streets, and in their own filth? And this story, I don't want to get into too much, but it's California once again. California is a disease-ridden homeless haven. So I don't know what California's doing. Let's read a little bit. So I'm not going to go into too much on the California typhus story from WebMD because we already did go over this in the main story. It talked about the history and what was going on last year. But let's talk about the rise of medieval diseases, which is how? Jennifer Miller keeps trash bags and hand sanitizer near her tent, and she regularly pours water mixed with hydrogen peroxide on the sidewalk nearby. Keeping herself and the patch of concrete she calls home clean is a top priority. But this homeless encampment off a Hollywood freeway ramp is often littered with needles and trash and soaked in urine. Rats occasionally scamper through, and Miller fears the consequences. I worry about all those diseases, said Miller, 43, who said she has been homeless most of her life. Infectious diseases, some that ravaged populations in the Middle Ages, are resurging in California and around the country, and are hitting homeless populations especially hard. Los Angeles recently experienced an outbreak of typhus, a disease spread by infected fleas. We read all this part. People in Washington State have been infected with the Shigella bacteria, which is spread through feces and causes the I don't even want to read this. This is gross stuff, man. I just want to ask how this is happening. And, for those that live in, the suburbs and in kind of rural areas, I think you're not experiencing this problem. Why is that? For one, as I mentioned earlier, you've got this proximity issue. Everyone's, living really crammed together, and there's a ton of trash that has to be moved. But I think we have to admit, when there are feces on your streets and all over the place, California, that's a cultural problem. Okay? Why is it that people feel the need to defecate in the street? That's not an issue of, that's an issue of people choosing to do that. Now, it could be that a lot of homeless people who have nowhere else to go, but, look, they're talking about Washington State and feces, right? Well, Washington State has public bathrooms. They have, on the street, excuse me. There's actually, I don't know, I think this might be Seattle, but they, go underground. It's, really cool, and you, press a button and it, rises from the street. They're talking about hepatitis A. Look, there's been a lot of stories about stuff like this, and it's just, it's just never ending, I guess. Now, admittedly, for the 13 plus million people in LA County, there were 124 cases. So I do think it's important to point out like the scale of the issue. And while there may be more cases of typhoid than before, it's actually a really, really small number considering how many people are in California. But I guess the main point of the video, which we'll wrap up on, is that California's got serious trash problems that New York and DC don't have, and they're also blue, heavily dense populated areas. Why is that, California? Why can't you get your act together? I don't know. You comment, let me know what you think. If you're watching, if you're checking us on the podcast, just leave a review or something, and stick around. I've got a couple more segments coming up, and I will see you shortly.